Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sportsballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Sportsballers podcast. I'm Evan Nash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. So today on the show, the NBA playoffs are getting started. There's plenty of Major League Baseball to, complain about. But we'll start in college baseball. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets baseball team completed a season sweep of the Georgia Bulldogs last night. In a, I believe it was a 7-6 walk-off win in the 14th inning. So this was the longest game by time in program history, 5 hours, 37 minutes. The program goes back to 1885. So, so that happened. Just wanted to bring that up.
Well, good for you guys.
Yeah, nothing like sweeping them because, we were, I think we got swept last year or 2 years ago. Anyway, wow. On to the NBA. The Hall of Fame ceremony was this weekend. I didn't watch it just because, it seemed like it was going to be really sad in light of Kobe Bryant getting inducted after he passed away. And then Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett were also inducted from the NBA. Eric, did you watch this?
I watched a good amount of it. I didn't have a chance to see Kevin Garnett's speech, and I was actually looking forward to seeing his, given the fact that he's Kevin Garnett and he's liable to say anything and talk a whole bunch of smack. We know the infamous Hall of Fame speech that Michael Jordan had back in 2007 or 8, whenever that was. This was nothing like that, even though it easily could have been given Kevin Garnett's notorious history of trash talk and pettiness. But there was one moment of petty in a name that he didn't mention, and that was Ray Allen, which we know all about. The big three, or I guess the big four, if you will, of the Celtics, which include Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Rajon Rondo, and how Ray Allen is sort of shunned among that crew because he joined the Heat after the 2012 season and won a championship with the enemy Miami Heat, but that was about it. But Tim Duncan he's such an interesting guy because people thought of him as just this boring dude who was totally uninteresting and Mr. Fundamental and all that stuff. He's kind of out there just doing whatever he wants. He's out there teaching Bikram yoga. He's just living his best life. He's got the hair going. We've never seen him do that before. Yep. So, full credit to him for just cutting it loose. I mean, he seemed like he was just a consummate professional when he played ball. But that doesn't mean that he can't have fun and do his own thing and have other hobbies.
Retirement. That's what all the hard work you did in your 20s and 30s, and that's what that's all about. It's supposed to get. You're supposed to get to that point where you can just enjoy retirement and do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit more of Tim Duncan because I think having his presence around NBA fandom will sort of. Not only will it reveal how interesting of a guy he is and how good of a dude he is, but it'll also give a bigger appreciation for how good of a player he was because he's oftentimes slept on, especially in this era where you've had big personalities like Kevin Garnett, like Kobe Bryant, like Shaquille O'Neal, and he was sort of the quiet, unassuming dude that would still dominate you for 48 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he's definitely a guy that it's very easy to forget about, but it shouldn't be easy to forget about him because he was amazing. He was such a good player.
Yeah, so Evan, got anything?
Oh, I mean, no, I agree. It's just Tim Duncan might get a little slept on just because he was so boring. But he was just boring. In the WNBA, Tamika Catchings was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And then coaches Eddie Sutton, Rudy Tomjanovich, Barbara Stevens, and Kim Mulkey were inducted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've heard of Rudy Tomjanovich. I thought he might have been in already, just because I've heard of him.
Oh, well, he coached the Houston Rockets in the mid-'90s when they won the 2 championships with Hakeem Olajuwon. So he's had an interesting career, too, because he sort of came up as a player with the Rockets and then kind of became almost like not quite a player-coach. It wasn't like Bill Russell, but it was like, hey, I'm done playing. I'm going to coach the team now. And that's kind of a cool thing. And his speech was pretty compelling. He got emotional, like people are wont to do when they get inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's of all times to get a little misty. This is probably the most appropriate time for a lot of people, other than obviously children being born or getting married and stuff like that. So, shout out to Big Rudy. He's awesome. Eddie Sutton also inducted in the Hall of Fame as a college coach, coached at Oklahoma State for a while, and for a lot of people are probably aware that OK State isn't exactly a basketball powerhouse, but he led them to a couple of Final Fours. And then Barbara Stevens was a longtime college women's coach. She coached at Bentley. Never even heard of Bentley as a school. I've heard of Bentley the car, but I've heard of Bentley's the bar, but never heard of the school. But full credit to her nonetheless. And Kim Mulkey, who established a basketball power at Baylor, recently just left Baylor to coach at LSU.
Yep.
And there was a little bit of talk about that, but nevertheless, she's obviously a Hall of Famer and deserving. And I think it's important, especially with Kobe Bryant, him being inducted into the Hall of Fame, to remember that Kobe was the biggest advocate for women's basketball as far as high-profile NBA players. He was that guy.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and he's got – I mean, it makes sense. He had 4 daughters. They were great athletes themselves, or are, and some were, unfortunately. But the level of emphasis Kobe had for the WNBA was a lot higher than people realize. And so the weekend that he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think it's also important to give equal credit to the WNBA and the women's college players and coaches that got inducted as well. So it was good to learn about Tamika Catchings and what she did with the Indiana Fever and how she's a 5-time Defensive Player of the Year and just how good of a player she was, because a lot of these players, other than maybe the highest brand names that you've heard coming through college, like Sue Bird and Diane Taurasi, everybody's heard of them, but some of these other players people haven't quite heard about as much, and they were still really good players and deserve their credit too.
Absolutely. Some notable honorees as well, Michael Wilbon and Mike Breen. So Michael Wilbon, anybody who listens to this show knows we love PTI on the show. So Michael Wilbon was one of the hosts of Pardon the Interruption on ESPN. And then also Mike Breen, who calls the games for ESPN and ABC, can get a little animated with his calls sometimes, and we really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously know Wilbon's work well, especially as the host of PTI.
We're familiar with his oeuvre.
Yes, and also, if you read the Washington Post back in the late 90s, like when I was a kid, I would read the sports page, and Wilbon usually had an interesting column to read along with Tony Kornheiser. And Mike was always really interesting when he was among the hosts on NBA Tonight or on ESPN's coverage or NBA Countdown. He was with Magic Johnson for a while, and it was always a great show. He and Stephen A. Smith would go back and forth a lot, and he's definitely contributed a lot to basketball in the era where we've grown up watching it. Like, he's been a mainstay reporting and commentating on the NBA. So it was good to see him be honored, because you could tell that's sort of where his heart is right now, is with professional basketball. And it shows with his work because he's great at it. And obviously Mike Breen, Evan, you said it yourself, he's a legend. I mean, he's one of the best in the business. And he's actually, it's interesting because he's stuck calling the game at this point with 2 curmudgeons. Mark Jackson, who just loves to complain about everything. And same thing with Jeff Van Gundy. They're 2 consummate complainers, which can be humorous at times, especially when they're complaining at each other, usually about each other. But Mike Breen always does a good job of keeping the focus on the game and bringing it back to the excitement on the court and having such enthusiasm. And, of course, his iconic calls, bang, when somebody hits a big 3. We all know about that. And he's just definitely a guy that deserves all the credit in the world.
Especially in the COVID era when there were limited or no fans at these games. You got to bring your own juice. That's not only the players but the commentators as well.
Yep.
If you're calling a big game and it's 60,000 people in a packed house and it's rocking, you can get fired up. But if it's just this cavernous, empty concrete shell and there's some guys running around, where's the energy from that situation? So, all right. Let's see. On to the actual basketball games. Let's start with one that I didn't watch, followed up by another one that I didn't watch. The Pacers eliminated the Hornets last night. This game had to have been watched by dozens of people. Eric, did you watch this?
I actually didn't get a chance to watch this one. I had some things to do. I would have watched it if I was on.
People then.
Yeah, I was not I was not the baker's dozen. I didn't put it quite over the top there, but I was not available to watch this. And apparently I didn't miss much of a game. The Pacers blew the doors off of the Hornets, which was, on one hand, it's hard to call it a surprise because the Hornets are really bad. But on the other hand, it is a surprise because the Pacers are really bad too. So you can't really expect a blowout when you watch two crappy teams go head-to-head. The Pacers look like they've been checked out since about mid-March. So I was surprised that they put forth such a strong effort. But at the same time, they've got pride too. And they've got individuals that are trying to get paid, and they're not trying to go out quietly. So they took it to the Hornets, and I think it's going to be an interesting rematch of sorts because the Washington Wizards have played a couple of tight games against the Pacers in recent history. Russell Westbrook had 24 assists in one of those games.
24 assists?
Yes, sir. And in the most recent affair, it went to overtime. Westbrook hit the tying and go-ahead free throws with about a second left. That was the game that Bradley Beal tweaked his hamstring. We kind of discussed that a little bit while he was scoring 50 points.
Yep.
And it looked like – I thought the Wizards were toast in that game just because I was like, they're not going to have Beal for overtime. They're screwed, but Westbrook got it done. So I think you'll see a pretty big offensive output in that game. Hopefully Beal's okay. He looked like he was struggling through that hamstring injury a little bit last night against the Celtics. But the one benefit is that the Pacers don't have anybody like Jason Tatum that's going to torch them for 50 points like Tatum did last night.
Oh, okay. Yes, on our sheet we have Celtics wax Wizards. So I was thinking about tuning in, but the Orioles were also busy getting waxed last night.
Priorities.
So, you know what? I'm going to just watch something on YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, stick with that. Yeah, like I said, the Wizards were up at halftime by 2. They made a nice run to close it down with the bench unit, and Ish Smith had the best game of his season.
Is that an actual person?
Yes, Ish Smith. Charles Barkley made fun of Ish Smith during halftime, and when he said, "What kind of mother names their son Ish?" and that created a raucous environment inside the NBA studios, like Charles tends to do. It's short for Ishmael, so it's a normal name. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, I've ragged on Ish Smith all year for being a bad basketball player, and then yesterday he plays his ass off. He scores 17 points. I think he shot 6 of 8 from the field, so it wasn't like he was just cranking up shots. He was playing really, really well, and none of the other Wizards showed up, and they just got completely demolished in the second half. They couldn't guard Kemba Walker. They couldn't guard Jason Tatum. And when you can't guard their two best guys, you tend to lose.
Okay, so the Celtics, with their win, they earned the 7th seed. They get to play the Brooklyn Nets. The Wizards, thanks to their pitiful performance, will play the Pacers, who are apparently terrible. That game is on Thursday at 8 o'clock on TNT. The winner of that game will get the honor of getting blasted by number 1 seeded Philadelphia 76ers. So it's really a toss-up as to you just get to keep playing for an extra week, right?
Yeah.
You lose this game or win this game and then lose the next 4.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting because I was listening to Bill Simmons' podcast this week, and he was dreading the thought of the Celtics having to play the Nets and watching Kyrie Irving just light them up for 4 nights in a row, and then nobody does anything about it. They just shake his hand and give him big hugs after every game. like nothing happened between him and that franchise. He was kind of hoping, honestly, that the Wizards would take them down. And I think it would be a more interesting matchup if the Wizards were playing the Nets, just because Russell Westbrook has beef with Kevin Durant and probably has a little bit of ill will towards James Harden after last season with the Rockets. I mean, it's more interesting when you've got bigger personalities. Instead, you've got the Celtics, who they won yesterday, but frankly, I think that team's just, they're packed and ready to go to Cancun.
Okay. On the western side of the bracket tonight, we've got the Spurs and the Grizzlies. I can already hear the snoring from this one. It's 7:30 on ESPN.
And why is
this even being televised?
Why is that the 7:30 game?
Yeah, this game should be on in the middle of the night.
Right.
Yeah, like when the Mariners play the A's, stuff like that. Just, who's watching this? Nobody. Nobody.
Yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a faux pas with the broadcasting decision. I understand that Los Angeles is on the West Coast, and having them play the game at what would be 4 or 5 in the afternoon would be a little bit of a cumbersome situation for the fans and for the people in the local markets. I agree because, as Tony Kornheiser pointed out,
dominated country.
Yeah.
Yes,
80% of the population lives west of Missouri.
Yes,
east of Missouri.
As Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser were arguing about this on PTI yesterday, and Wilbon was bashing Kornheiser and his I-95 bias, at which point Tony pointed out quite astutely that 150 million people live along I-95 and east of it, so maybe we deserve a little bit of consideration. And the marquee game of this play-in is Warriors-Lakers. That's the one that everybody wanted to see. It was a fluke that it even happened, given the fact that the Lakers still figure to be a championship contender, and the Warriors happen to have one of the best players of all time. I mean, this just isn't supposed to be a 7-8 matchup, given the high profile of the guys on the team, and yet somehow this perfect storm happened where you have not quite a winner-take-all game, because the loser gets a chance to beat up on the Spurs or the Grizzlies to get in as the 8, but it's still a pretty
most game.
It's a high-stakes single game. It's a one-off game that has big ramifications, and it's between these two teams, with Steph Curry playing as well as he is, and with LeBron James and Anthony Davis returning to health and still hoping to get back to the NBA Finals. And the game's on at 10 o'clock on a weeknight. Poor show.
Yeah. I'm reminded of, like when a guy's the best player on his team by far, and like he dribbles the ball up over half court and he gets to the top of the key and he's just staring at his defender and dribbling, and then he's waving to his teammates to get out of the way. That's what the NBA should have done with this game. Put it on right at 8 o'clock, and then with this Spurs-Grizzlies game, you just figure it out. You just play it alongside, play it after, play it before. It don't matter. You have to focus on this game.
Run a little clear out and let the Lakers and the Warriors ISO a little bit. I think that would have been nice.
It's so obvious.
I do have to say,
gotta know where your bread is buttered, ESPN.
I do have to say, though, I have a problem with Evan likening this to a late night, 10 p.m. A's-Mariners matchup, because unlike you guys, I actually like watching no-hitters. So I'm watching that game because I don't know who the A's pitcher is, but I know he's taking a no-hitter deep into the game if he's playing the Mariners.
It's a safe bet. I'm so glad I'm done with them. I wouldn't be able to handle this right now.
Yeah, the Mariners, they seem just miserable. So I will try to stay up and watch at least some of Warriors.
I will too.
I'm turning into an old man. I don't see myself making it past halftime.
And to be honest, as exciting as the matchup is, I think if the Lakers are on their game, they're going to win by double digits. I just don't think the Warriors have the team that can beat this squad. I mean, they kind of fluked their way into a win back in January, and the last 2 times they met up, they got blown out, and that was with one of Anthony Davis or LeBron James not playing. So it's not a good matchup for Golden State. They don't have the horses to keep up. So it would require Steph being even more superhuman than he has been this year for them to win, in my opinion. Or the Lakers would just have to have a rough night. But definitely expecting the Lakers to take care of business.
Okay. So I guess to recap our matchups, so it's number 1 Philly against number 8, the winner of the Indy and Washington game. You have Brooklyn and Boston, Milwaukee and Miami, and the Knicks and the Hawks. Any of these jump out to you as particularly intriguing in the first round?
Oh yeah, I think that there are 2 good series here. I think one has potential title ramifications, and that's Bucks versus Heat, because this is the matchup we saw last year where the Bucks went into the bubble. They were the number 1 seed. They were the favorites to win the East by a decent margin, especially with the Raptors falling off when Kawhi Leonard left. And they run into the Miami Heat, who blew the doors off of them and won in 5 games, but it could have easily been a sweep. And I feel like there's some demons still there for this Milwaukee Bucks team, because they have underperformed in the postseason, and this feels like kind of the year where they could get it done. This feels like the best version of their team, even though their record isn't quite as good as it has been in years past. This feels like the best team built to win in the playoffs, and yet here they are running into this adversary that's really tough. I mean, this Miami Heat team is underseeded because they got their ass kicked by COVID-19. Jimmy Butler missed a lot of time because of that. They had all kinds of continuity issues as a result. But when they're fully healthy and on the floor, they're a force to be reckoned with. I think the Bucks should win the series, but I wouldn't count out the Heat. It's definitely got the highest level of intrigue because, frankly, I think the Bucks have the team to beat the Brooklyn Nets. But if they don't get there, then they don't get there.
So, a couple questions on the Miami side. How has Tyler Hero been this year? Because, I mean, he was a big story in the bubble last year. He played fantastic. He was a great compliment to Jimmy Butler for their offense. But a lot of what I've heard this year is that he's kind of gotten a little bit of a big head about him. He's down there in Miami Beach partying, and he may not really be all about the basketball right now. Have you gotten that same sense about him? And the second question would be, if Miami does beat the Bucks, do you think that they're a team that could actually make a run toward the NBA Finals?
I'd have a harder time seeing them pulling it off against Brooklyn in the next matchup, because let's just be clear, Brooklyn's going to destroy the Celtics. I'd be surprised if that series goes more than 4 games. I'm predicting a sweep. But obviously the Heat are a good team, and they've got the Heat culture going on. They've got talent. They're physically tough. They definitely can score on the Nets. But I just don't think that they have the defense at this point. The guys they rely on for perimeter defense are all dudes that are well into their 30s. Like Andre Iguodala is going to go out there and be a stopper against James Harden or Kyrie Irving at this point in his career. That's not something that I would count on. As much as I love Iguodala, I don't think he's that player anymore. So I just think that there's matchup issues that definitely favor the Bucks against the Nets, whereas the Heat, I think they would have a harder time. And to go back to Tyler Hero, he's definitely not been as good this year. His shooting fell off a little bit. I think there's been a whole lot of jokes about him when he was struggling early in the year because the Heat were apparently unwilling to give him up in a trade for James Harden, which is a big part of the reason why the Nets ended up getting him, because the Heat could have made a competitive offer, but they weren't willing to part ways with Hero, which, again, excuse me? Like, what are you talking about?
I get the excitement about the kid. He's young. He had a fantastic showing in the bubble, but we're talking about James Harden here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's even worse than the fact that the Celtics wouldn't trade Jaylen Brown, who is an all-star, but they refused to give him up for a superstar. This is giving up a good role player that could turn into maybe a little better than that for a superstar. It just didn't make any sense. But I think Hero's playing a little bit better. He's got just an awful haircut now. Like, it's just full-on Dumb and Dumber style.
Oh,
Lloyd Christmas just looks ridiculous. Yeah, it's ugly. But he seems to be playing a little bit better. They're going to need him to shoot well if they're going to beat the Bucks again. But I still think he's a good young player. And honestly, James Harden parties his ass off too. So I don't think the fact that he's whooping it up in Miami Beach and maybe spending a little bit too much time at the bar, I don't think that's going to have a serious effect. I think it's just a matter of he's 21 years old. He's figuring out how to be an NBA player. I think he's got a long career ahead of him.
Okay.
I must not be seeing his current haircut, because I'm not seeing anything here that looks any, crazier than what he had last year in the bubble.
Yeah, he had the big poofy salad last year, but he got it cut short. You can keep looking for pictures of that.
I'll look later.
It's particularly on an audio podcast.
It's not super interesting on an audio podcast to talk about some dude's hair. Anyway, Evan, you were. I do also want to mention before we jet out of the East, I do think that the Hawks and the Knicks could be an interesting series. Obviously, neither one of those teams is beating Philadelphia in the second round, but I think it could be interesting because it's a clash of styles. Atlanta's a high-flying offense. Trae Young is a great shooter and a great playmaker.
Well, anytime you see a 4 versus 5, you expect it to probably be a longer series because they're a little more evenly matched.
Sure, but they're also it's the Eastern Conference, so a lot of times you look at the 4 or 5 and you're like, these two teams stink, so who cares?
Sure.
But in this case, neither of these teams stink. They're both pretty good, and the Knicks play Tom Thibodeau style defense. They're physical, they're nasty, they compete for 48 minutes. They probably play too many minutes, so that could become a problem for them as well. But it's going to be an interesting styles make fights type of series. It's offense versus defense, and I'm kind of intrigued by it. And I think a lot of times people sleep on series like that because they go into it knowing neither one of these teams can win the title, so who cares? Well, it's still entertaining to watch. I'm still going to enjoy watching good basketball being played.
Okay. Out west, the Utah Jazz earned the number 1 seed in anonymity, if you ask me. They're going to play whoever makes it out of the play-in tournament and gets the 8th seed. So,
it could be literally any of those 4 teams.
Yeah, it could be any of the 4 teams.
That's why I wrote down IDK. I was like, I'm not listing all 4 of these. That's annoying.
Yeah. I changed it to TBA because IDK was confusing. Like, what team is that?
The Indiana Knights.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's not a thing. I think the Jazz should be fine. I mean, they're probably going to get matched up against, in all honesty, probably Golden State, because I think Golden State's going to lose to the Lakers tonight, and they'll probably beat the Grizzlies or the Spurs, whoever wins that game, because the Warriors are better than both of those teams. But I think that if they play Golden State, that could be interesting for sure, because Steph Curry's a pain in the ass to defend, especially given the fact that Rudy Gobert is their best defender and he patrols the paint. And Steph Curry doesn't have to operate in the paint to tear you up. So they're going to be situations. He doesn't even have to
operate outside of the midcourt logo.
That's also very true. So there's going to be situations where I don't think that the Warriors are ever going to play Rudy Gobert off the court with their style of play, just because I don't think that the Jazz can afford that. But it's definitely not Gobert's favorite thing to do, to have to step out 30 feet from the basket and defend a guard. I mean, we saw this matchup 4 years ago in the postseason. Obviously, the Warriors were a much, much better team back then. But there were situations where Gobert had to guard Curry one-on-one, and it became a meme and a highlight reel because Rudy Gobert was just spinning around looking like a fool while Curry was chopping him up. So he doesn't want any part of that. I don't think the Jazz have anybody that they can really consistently throw at Steph. So it could get interesting if they steal one of those first 2 games in Utah, because the Jazz haven't quite figured out how to play. But ultimately, the Jazz are deeper. They're better. They should have their guards back. Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell should be healthy for this game or for this series. So assuming that's the way it goes, I could see that series getting stretched to 6 games, maybe just because of the Steph and Draymond factor. But if they play anybody else, if they play the Grizzlies or they play the Spurs or they play the Lakers, then now if they play the Lakers, I think the Lakers are going to stomp them. I think it's going to be 5-game series at worst. Like the Jazz are a phony baloney number 1 seed. They got no business standing on the court with the Lakers in a meaningful playoff series. They're going to get run. But they can beat the middle-of-the-pack teams like the Grizzlies, like the Spurs, and like the Warriors in the series. After that, good night, bye-bye, see you later. Which I'm sure the NBA will be happy about because they hate the Mountain Time Zone. Those teams are, like Evan always says, NBA Siberia. They'd be happy to get rid of the Nuggets, They'd be happy to get rid of the Jazz, and they'd probably honestly be happy to get rid of the Suns too.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Phoenix and the winner of the Lakers and Warriors. I thought Phoenix was terrible. When did they get good? What happened? Well, they picked number 1 in the draft like 2 years ago with DeAndre Ayton, right?
Well,
yes, they did.
They've got my boy Cory Booker, aka Devin Booker.
Yeah.
What is this? Yeah. Devin Booker?
It's Devin Booker. Yes.
Okay.
So the Suns last year, I talked about them early in the 2019-2020 season as a team that was playing really well. You can check the tape on it. We did a podcast. I did a State of the NBA on it early that season. It was like, damn, the Suns' offense looks amazing. Then they had a lot of injuries that season. DeAndre Ayton got hurt. I think Devin Booker might have missed some time. They just had all kinds of problems, and they ended up falling out of the playoff mix. But then they went to the bubble and went 8-0 in the bubble, missed the playoffs by 1 game. And they came in this year, and they had playoff expectations. And then they went and signed Chris Paul, or at least they traded for him. And, Chris Paul is a guy that makes every team he's on better. That's what Hall of Fame point guards do, even when they're 36 years old. And so the Suns have become a pretty darn good team. I kind of see them similar to the Jazz, where if they have to step up against the Lakers, they're going to get smushed. But they can certainly beat the Warriors if they play against them. I worry a little bit about this team's playoff experience, though. It just doesn't exist. I mean, the Suns haven't made the playoffs in 11 years. And so the most likely matchup for them is going to be the Los Angeles Lakers, who are the defending champions, who are dealing with some injuries or maybe some lingering injuries with LeBron and Anthony Davis. But if those guys are a full go and they don't re-aggravate any injuries, they're also well-rested. So they could just get stomped down a crack here if they get stuck playing against the Lakers. Now, if they play the Warriors, again, the Warriors stink. They got 2 guys that are good. They got Steph and Draymond, and that's it. The rest of the team, you take Steph off this team, they're a 15-win team. So the Suns absolutely should beat the Warriors if they play them. I see the Suns getting out of the first round unless they play the Lakers. And then they might play the Nuggets, at which point they might compete against Denver. But I think Denver is better than them as well. I think they're more fit to win a playoff series. This feels like a team that they should hope that they don't get the Lakers. If they win a playoff series and they get rolled by Denver, or maybe even get by them, get to the conference finals and get stomped by the Lakers or the Clippers, they should feel good about themselves.
I'd like to see Phoenix make it at least to the next round. That's really something to go from not making the playoffs in over a decade to not just making the playoffs but being the number 2 seed. It would be a shame for them to get bounced in the first round just because they had to go up against, the Lakers.
Yeah, you don't get to play bad teams in the playoffs usually.
Not typically.
In the West.
No, especially not in the West. But still, it would just be kind of a shame to see them go that early.
Yeah, and Corey's got a good point because despite, regardless of the fact that the West is really deep and they've got some good teams, pretty much up and down the list.
If they were playing Portland in the second round, or if they were playing, even if they were playing Dallas in the second round, you'd probably say Phoenix should win this series.
Yeah, I would take the Suns over anybody in a head-to-head series except for the Lakers and probably the Clippers. And then against the team like the Nuggets, it's sort of a toss-up.
Yeah.
But they should beat Portland. They should beat Dallas. They should beat Golden State. They should beat any teams except for the LA teams and maybe the Nuggets. So they definitely earned a top 4 status. It's just unfortunate for them that the Lakers were so torn up by injuries that they fell down the standings and could be facing them as the 7th seed. But hey, you can't always pick your opponents. Just because the Clippers managed to duck the Lakers like a bunch of cowards by tanking their last 2 games. They lost to the Thunder in the last game of the year. The Thunder hadn't won a game in over a month. What? They had won 1 time in 22 games. And that 1 time was against the Celtics, who were trying, by the way.
I mean, that's 1988 Orioles right there.
Yes, it was a pure tank job by the Oklahoma City Thunder. They straight up said, they told Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was a budding star, hey, you're going to sit for the last month and a half of the season. It was absolutely a total tank job. But nevertheless, the Clippers said, you know what? We're going to lose to the second worst team in the league, the Rockets, because we're not going to play anybody good. and then we're going to lose to the worst team in the league, the Thunder, because we're not going to play any of our good players then either, just so that we could slip down to the 4 seed and not have to play the Lakers in the second round.
Well, I hope the Mavericks beat the doors off of them for that. I don't think it's going to happen, but I hope they do.
Well, I hope they beat the doors off them because I'm tired of playoff P. I inherently root against the Clippers. And the Clippers talk all this smack about how it's Battle Los Angeles, it's on, baby. We're no longer little brothers to the Lakers. We're going to build our own arena. We don't need the Staples Center, all this crap. And then when push comes to shove, they're ducking the Lakers.
Mm-hmm. They're building their arena right next to the Lakers' old arena in the Great Western Forum. I think it's called the Sponsor something Forum. But
I also like Luka Doncic, so that's another reason to root for the Mavs.
Yeah, but Luka's got to stop whining to the refs, man. He's gotten teed up more than Draymond Green has this year.
Yeah.
That is saying something right
yes.
there. Also, is Draymond... What's happened to Draymond Green? All I'm hearing about is Steph. And, where's Draymond?
I mean, Draymond is still there, and he's still playing good basketball, especially good defense. The biggest issue is that because they don't have Klay Thompson, the team isn't really that good. So you're really just hearing about the guy who is leading the league in scoring. That's Steph.
Okay.
Yeah,
sort of like a binary star system. You can't really see the dimmer one. You only see the bright one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the thing with Draymond is I think that people are kind of on to him as he's a great player when surrounded by great talent. Like, he's got the ability to facilitate a system where there's going to be a lot of good players around him. But when he's only got one, it doesn't stand out as much. Now, he's absolutely racked up a ton of assists this year. He's played still all NBA level defense. And frankly, his impact is still probably all-star level. But when you go out there and nobody defends you because you can't shoot, and nobody defends you and leaves the paint wide open for you to drive because they think you're going to blow the layup, it says something about the state of your game.
He's 7 feet tall? How do you miss a layup when you're that tall?
Well, he's only actually close to 6'6", 6'7", but
oh, okay. He's
yeah,
a little guy.
Yeah, he's a small big man, but he's still got that basketball IQ, and he's got that synergy with Steph that really helps that team go. The problem is, like Corey said, Steph's one guy, and normally you had 2 or 3 guys that the other team absolutely had to defend, which meant there are even more opportunities for Draymond to get open passes to good shooters, whereas now there's only one good shooter, and he's the guy getting guarded by everybody. So Draymond's been forced to pass the ball to Andrew Wiggins or Kelly Oubre or some G League guys that they pulled up off the scrap heap. It's not going to be a good situation for him, but he's still very present with that team, and he's a big part of what they do. If he's not there, they're in trouble too. It's not to the degree of Steph, obviously, but Steph's having an MVP type of season. Draymond's just simply having a do all the little things that most people don't notice, but still add up to him being as valuable as an all-star.
Okay. Oh boy, Denver and Portland. Goodness gracious.
NBA Siberia times 2.
Right. Might be times 7. They play the whole thing out. At least the Spurs and Grizzlies only play once.
I still laugh my ass off at the fact that Portland, the Moda Center, is the only place that is ineligible to host the All-Star game because Portland doesn't have a hotel big enough for the capacity of all that involves having the All-Star game there. They simply cannot host. Yeah, they don't have what it takes to put enough people in that place. They don't have the bandwidth for the All-Star game. As a city that's supposed to be a large metropolitan area, they can't. A
city that wants a Major League Baseball team too.
Yes. It's bad. And people sleep on Portland as being NBA Siberia because it's a little bit more – it's not a little bit. It's on the West Coast, so people kind of lump it in with places like Seattle, like San Francisco. Nah, this place is out in Oregon, man. It ain't that. And it's no disrespect to the city at all. I got no beef with Portland, but it's definitely not a big market. Like Denver's a much bigger market, and we make fun of Denver all the time on this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, but anyway, the teams themselves – I think Denver's got this series in the bag. I know they met a couple of years ago, and they played a 7-game series and was really competitive, but Nikola Jokic is a better player than he was back then. And a lot of the Portland surrounding cast has deteriorated. They're just not as good. Yusuf Nurkic has been a shell of himself. He had a really nice showing in the bubble last year, but He's slowed down since he had a pretty catastrophic leg injury a couple years ago. They're just the Trailblazers just don't inspire me at all. They got Damian Lillard, but that's one guy too, and that one guy is great, but he's not Steph Curry great. So it's not going to be that type of, oh, Dame's just going to backpack this team through the first round against Denver. Denver's got the MVP, and it's a rightful MVP. Nikola Jokic is having an incredible season. Michael Porter Jr. has emerged as a legit number 2. He's actually stepped up his game big time since Jamal Murray got hurt. I think Denver's just got the depth to just pound this team out. I mean, I just think 5-6 games is what I would expect. I don't believe in Portland that much.
Okay. We talked briefly about the Clippers and the Mavericks. Do you have anything to add before we move on to baseball, Major League Baseball?
As much as I would like to agree, or not agree, I do agree with Corey. I want to see Dallas beat Denver. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, not Denver. Beat the Clippers.
Beat
I'm sorry. Yeah, beat the Clippers. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that the Mavericks are sort of a one-way team. They play offense, but they can't play any defense. And that's going to be hard to deal with when you're dealing with Kawhi Leonard. And even if Way Off P continues to brick threes off the backboard, I just don't see that mattering. They're just not going to hit shots the way they need to with the Clippers' perimeter defense. I think that they've got a good enough team to at least get past the Mavericks. Now, you stick them up against the Jazz, I think it gets a lot more interesting. But Dallas, I think, just isn't at that level yet.
It's tough, though, because when you lose games like the Clippers did to close out the season, even when it's on purpose, you lose against teams that are as bad as the ones that they faced. Sometimes that, you just kind of have some residual effects. Now, it's a 7-game series, so even if, the first game they come out flat and it's, you might be able to attribute it to that, you would think that they'll bounce back, but, you also can't understate, the role of momentum in an NBA playoff series. If Dallas gets the momentum early, then, they can take that and run with it and really make things difficult on the Clippers. So I'm hoping that that's what happens.
Yeah, I think that there are certain teams that can flip a switch and just go from coasting to being a championship caliber team. The Clippers do not apply to that. That's not them. Golden State could do that when they had KD, and the last 2 years that they had KD, they cruised through the regular season. They got their ass beat by teams by 40 points some nights because they just didn't care. And, of course, when they show up in the playoffs, they're blowing the doors off of everybody because they're Golden State. But the Clippers don't have a championship pedigree. They don't have that built in like the Lakers do. The Lakers won the title last year. I struggle to believe in teams that think they're good enough to coast when they haven't won a damn thing yet. And that's what the Clippers are. That's what the Clippers franchise is, man. You can't just
they haven't won anything ever.
They've never made a conference finals. Like, what are you doing?
Even the Jacksonville Jaguars have been to the conference finals
a couple of times. So I think that I do agree with that, Corey, that and plus the Clippers have sucked late in games, like close game situations, clutch time moments. They've been one of the worst teams in the league. And the Mavericks were that last year, but the Mavericks figured it out this year. That could kind of turn the tide a little bit in some of these games because last year the Mavericks and the Clippers played in the bubble, and it was a pretty good series. It was a 6-game series. Luka hit that game winner in Game 5 to extend it. It might have been Game 4. But, this year I just think the Mavericks have lost a little bit of something, which is ultimately going to help the Clippers stay ahead of them, even though I still think the Clippers are kind of phony. I think that if they end up playing the Lakers in a conference finals, the Lakers are going to dump truck them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Who's the Clippers coach now?
Tyronn Lue.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm rooting for Dallas as well, and the Clippers get on my nerves. I'm playoff P, certainly been over that a bunch of times. And then this tanking thing, just how are you so scared of the Lakers to the point where you just blow games on purpose? That's inexcusable to me. Like, there's no reason to do that other than you're scared of your literal roommate, in this case.
Yep.
So, Oh boy, on to the Orioles in Major League Baseball. They're not losing yet tonight because that game hasn't started. But the Orioles have only won one game in the past week since our last show. And that was on Sunday afternoon versus Corey's Yankees, who just let one slip away.
And I know that I should just, bite my tongue, let you guys enjoy the fact that at least you got one in the past week. But, God, that game was so frustrating because we took a 4-0 lead in the top of the first off of, what is his name, Ryan Plutko? Whatever his first name is.
Sure.
Whatever
Adam,
his first name is. Who cares?
Whatever.
He sucks.
Adam
Plutko.
Yeah.
And then we let we let this guy Zimmerman come in. Bruce Zimmerman comes in and pitches 5 2/3, gives up one run maybe in that time, and this is a guy who was coming into that game with an ERA that was over 5. It might have even been over 6 going into that game. Just absolutely abysmal starts of the year for him, and we just can't do anything off of him. By the end of the third inning, the game is tied, and y'all never looked back.
Yeah, so, the one shining moment for the Orioles this week. So last night was Matt Harvey night. He got annihilated. He gave up 6 earned runs in a brief inning and 2/3. I didn't even turn he gave up a pair of 3-run home runs in the second inning. And I stepped away for 5 minutes. I come back. What happened? It's just blown up that quickly. So he was terrible last week against the Mets. He was terrible last night against Tampa Bay. So hopefully he'll be less terrible in his next start instead of more terrible, although it seems to be trending towards more terrible. Let's see. Ryan Mountcastle can't hit the ball. He swings at everything. Nothing's in the zone. He's just waving at it, trying outside pitches. He's trying to crank them to left field. Ryan Mountcastle, what are you doing?
Are we a little worried that Ryan Mountcastle is going the way of Chance Sisco, where he just isn't good?
His batting average is still 3 times Chance Sisco's batting.
I understand that, but I am so disappointed in Mountcastle so far this year because he had such a good year last season, albeit a brief season, but he showed a lot of promise, and this year, just a brutal start. I mean, I hope he figures it out.
He's still an everyday starter in Evan's lineup. In fantasy.
Not an everyday starter. I'm not starting him tonight.
He's been pretty much every day.
Yeah, I hope he figures it out, but the Orioles have a lot of young talent coming through the system, so it's going to be a situation where you better put up some numbers and figure it out, or else you're going to be moving out soon enough. So
that's true.
Hopefully Mountcastle gets it together because I would like to see him be a part of the team's future. Yeah,
he just needs to relax, right, and let his natural talent take over because I know it's in there. Okay, he's trying so hard. He's going to squeeze the bat till it just turns to dust up there. Just relax, man. Right? We last year he had that big smile all the time. We haven't seen that this season. Where's that guy? So, dude, just relax, okay? Just relax.
RELAX.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very good, Aaron Rodgers.
And let's swing at some pitches in the strike zone. Let's just start with that. Let's see. Who else isn't doing anything? Chance Sisco sucks. I have one here. His defense behind the plate is Gary Sanchez-esque.
That is damning.
Yeah. So he had a pass ball, just a brutal pass ball right through his legs. The ball didn't hit the ground. He just didn't get off his feet to block it. He just tried to put his glove down and missed. The ball rolled all the way to the backstop and allowed a run to score. He can't hit either. He can't hit at all. I don't know what his deal is. It seems like when he's swinging, he's not, the way his head is positioned, he's not looking at the ball anymore or something. It's just weird. So I mentioned before on here that Jim Palmer coined the term a Cisco for just a little softly hit looping floater that falls in for a hit. Those are only type of hits Chance Cisco gets. So, there's that. He's barely doing a good enough job of keeping the seat warm for Adley Rutschman when he's ready.
How long is it going to be until he's ready? Because it feels like y'all need him now.
We need a lot of stuff. We need divine intervention. But, Adley is in Double-A now. I mean, I certainly don't think he's coming up this season.
At some point and see him play.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be up this season. I think Adley maybe at the earliest this time next year. But yeah, so
I think he gets called up late April of 2022. To play the arbitration, play the service time game. And because there's, like you said, there's no need to call him up this year. The Orioles aren't competitive, but at the same time, I think he's played really well down in Bowie this year. I mean, he hit himself in the face on the scoreboard with a 434-foot bomb at Bowie, and we know what he's capable of behind the dish. I mean, he's definitely...
Is he capable of catching the ball? Because that would be an upgrade over the guy.
So I feel like he's a situation where if they were desperate and they were like in the heat of a pennant race, you could see him be called up later this year. But the Orioles aren't even close to that, so there's no need to rush it. I think it'll be next year. Because I think next year is when you'll start to see the Orioles start to tick up as a competent team. Maybe not a playoff contender, but something resembling good, whereas this year they're not there.
I don't see the Orioles as the type of team that comes out of nowhere either. Like the 2012 team just appeared out of the ground like a mirage.
And the 2012 team... The 2012 team, normally you would expect a team like that to get good because they called up these young guys. They called up Manny Machado. But the team was good, and that caused them to call up Manny Machado, even though the guys they had were supposed to be terrible. So, sometimes things like that just happen.
Yeah, the Orioles completely fell off in the last couple of weeks. You guys were 1 game below 500 10 games ago, and now you're 7 games below 500.
This is the Orioles, man. We knew we were getting this year. When they were 14-15 or 15-16 or whatever it was, we knew it wasn't going to last. We knew that was fake.
The only team in the AL East with a negative run differential.
Okay.
Again, what a shock.
Otherwise,
why would the Orioles have a positive run differential? They stink.
The Blue Jays hit the ball, right? The Orioles don't.
Nah. The Orioles got one guy that can pitch, and maybe 2 or 3 guys that can hit. That's the team.
Oh, who's the other guys?
Cedric Mullins.
Cedric Mullins, and then
Trey Mancini can hit. He hasn't really hit this year, but so that's 2, and maybe Santander if he ever comes back.
Where's he? He's gone. Yeah, 2 or 3 guys who can hit, and you need 6 more. In the American League. So, it's just a mess.
Rio Ruiz is gone, though.
Yes, Rio Ruiz got DFA'd last night or 2 nights ago now. Called up Stevie Wilkerson. He's going to play second base. I wrote down that the second base position has been the pit of misery. The Orioles, just a complete black hole of nothing.
Dilly.
Yeah, they don't. Whoever they put there can't hit and also can't field. Like there is no second baseman on this team. So that person needs to emerge. People have been saying Chance Cisco could play second base. No, he's not, because he can't hit the ball enough to even be on the team. So that's not going to happen. Somebody suggests, well, let's just put Ryan Mountcastle at second base. He's played all the other positions in his professional career. So
he can't play the easy one, so let's put him at one of the harder ones. Is that the plan?
I don't know. People just saying stuff. It's Twitter. People just talk.
I'm disappointed. Evan lost a chance for an A+ Princess Bride reference there. You could call it the Pit of Despair.
I don't like that movie.
You don't like that movie?
No.
I already said Pit of Misery Dilly Dilly because that was a Bud Light advertisement a few years ago.
I'm thinking the Pit of Despair.
I understand what you're thinking of, but I'm thinking of the actual reference that Evan made.
Yeah. Yeah. No dilly dilly on this one. It's just only misery. Speaking of misery, we have even more misery. Chris Davis is going to have surgery to repair a torn labrum in his left hip. He's going to miss the remainder of the season in 2021. So Chris Davis has put up his highest performance in WAR since 2016 in 2021.
That's true. It's true.
So it's been an incredible year for him compared to.
He's really bounced back, man. He's trending up.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody asked an interesting question today on Twitter, whether or not Chris Davis will end up in the Orioles Hall of Fame.
I voted yes.
I voted yes as well. I did.
Just because of the home runs?
Yeah, I mean,
it's like fifth all time in Orioles home runs.
He's got the franchise record for a single season. I mean, it's a big haul. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot to get into the Orioles Hall. And I think Chris Davis, compared to what everybody else has done and what the standard is, I think he belongs.
I mean, if Roberto Alomar's in for playing for
Isn't
2
his
years.
career WAR in the negatives by now?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it's not. It's like 12.
That's actually mildly surprising to me.
Well, come on. He had some really
I know
good
he had
years.
some really good years, but he has had so many stinkers since then.
Yeah, but the thing is,
And
the
we're
last few
talking
years,
about his WAR at 0.0 this year because he hasn't played is the best that he's had since 2016, 5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, but it's not like his WAR. Like, there's only one season where he was playing constantly despite being horrible. Every other year, he's been in and out of the lineup on account of having a case of the sucks. It's just that when he was out there, he accumulated negative WAR, but it was only maybe
After
like
5 years,
a
I don't
half
know if
a
it's
win.
a case anymore. I think that's just
A
his
case
reality.
of the sucks. Yeah, that's being kind. Like, this is
if he suddenly came back next year and was doing well, I would say he has a case of the goods because that is not normal for him anymore.
Yeah, it's not a case. It's a permanent condition at this point. This is just
this is very much chronic.
This is his life now. He's just bad at baseball and still cashes big checks. But yeah, I said he belongs in. I said Matt Wieters belongs in. I said Jonathan Scope. Put them all in.
Manny Machado certainly belongs. Manny Machado's like top 10 all time in Orioles WAR. He played like 5 years.
Yeah,
that's how good he was.
Yep.
And Orioles, like, you can go to the Dodgers. Let's just get rid of you.
Yeah, because it's not like the Orioles have always been bad. There are plenty of players that are worthy of being, high-ranking players. I mean, Brooks Robinson and obviously Cal Ripken and guys like that. They have guys. It's not like, oh, Manny Machado top 10 in WAR after only playing for 6 seasons with the team. It's like, yeah, but historically this is a pretty good franchise.
So
it's
now,
I don't know about his. I mean, that's
now
3 World Series wins is more than most people have.
Now that we're all vaccinated, do you guys want to go to an Orioles game at Camden Yards? Maybe sometime in the next 10 games, perhaps?
No.
I mean, they don't have any home games.
That was the point. I was trying to lead you into that.
That was terrible, Corey.
Eric's giving me the thumbs down.
Yeah. So anyway, the Orioles have a 10-game road trip coming up. So before they start the road trip, they have a home game that's starting as we speak right now. They have a day game tomorrow against Tampa Bay. And then they hit the road in air quotes for the first 3 because they're in Washington. So that's really not that much of a road game. The pitchers will have to hit for some stupid reason. Can we please get rid of this?
It'll be nice for them to play in a good stadium for a change.
What are you talking about?
I'm kidding.
I've been to a bunch of ballparks. Nationals Park, it's in Tropicana Field, guaranteed rate field territory.
No, it is better than Trop. It is better than the Trop.
I get
that you stand for the Trop
again,
and so that's not really a put down for you, but that is a massive put down for me, and that is ridiculous.
Okay, because you've been to the Trop so many times.
I will say, but
go to a game there and then tell me it sucks.
I will say before we move off the Orioles, I did find it amusing when Corey's just like talking about we got shut down by this guy named Ryan Pletko and then some dude named Zimmerman, just like he's reading off these names, these random ass Orioles that nobody outside of Orioles fans would ever heard of, and we're just like, yeah, these are our players. This is
I
our
looked at
team.
it, and at
They
first I
may
was
be
like, is
bums,
this like,
but there are bums.
if it
Okay?
wasn't for the fact that he had just announced his retirement, I would have thought it was like Jordan Zimmerman back from wherever he's been.
That was a common misconception when he joined the team. It was like, we got Jordan Zimmerman? Like, no.
No. You wish, but no.
Maybe. I don't know. He kind of didn't pan out very well after he left DC.
No, he didn't.
I was actually at an Orioles Nationals game, and we were sitting next to Jordan Zimmerman's family. So, like, there I am cheering on the Orioles next to the starting pitcher's family for the other team.
For the
that was
opposition.
a little awkward. So we got 3 in Washington. We got 3 versus the Twins. We'll get to them we'll get to them shortly. And then the White Sox, who we'll also discuss shortly. Well, interesting little series, that White Sox series. I'm not going to elaborate more, but it's interesting for me personally, and I will leave it at that. So next we have Yankees on here, and then just an empty space.
Yeah, I don't need to jot down notes. I can just talk about my Yankees. Yeah, I've been keeping close enough tabs on things lately, and interesting series last week before the Baltimore series against the Rays. Very nice, Eric. So that 3-game series against the Rays, the Yankees won 2 of the games, were outscored 5-10 in the series because we gave up 9 runs in Thursday's game. Then we gave up 10 runs in Sunday's game, as you mentioned, against the Orioles. So our team ERA has ballooned from 3.0 when we had our podcast last week on the season to like 3.6 something.
Oh, no.
We've added
For
60
you.
points to our ERA in the past week. It's ridiculous. But
That must be brutal.
no, we're
Only giving up
3-3 in the
4
past
runs a
week.
game.
But we're in the middle of a 4-game set against the Rangers right now. We're about to start the next game in about an hour as we're talking at the moment. Lost on Monday, won yesterday. Gleyber Torres has been cleared to come back, which he'd been starting to turn things around a little bit offensively, and his defense is always going to be subpar. We're never going to expect him to have really good defense. He's just not a good defender. But he was cleaning things up in the weeks before he had to sit out because of a potential case of COVID. I don't know that he ever actually tested positive. I actually don't know what came of that. Maybe he did, and I just missed that. I kept seeing like he's out. They're still waiting on results. They're not sure. He's kind of I don't really know what happened there. It was just a really bizarre situation with him. But he's cleared. He's able to come back. I think Roughneck Odor came back from the injured list yesterday. Aaron Judge is coming off a great week. He was the American League Offensive Player of the Week. He hit 5 home runs last week, which is pretty impressive.
I'm aware. Yeah.
All of them against the Orioles, it seems.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, which back to 2018 or 2019, Aaron Judge just hitting dongs every single day against the Orioles. Can't jack any against anybody else, it felt like.
He's got like 12 this year and 7 of them against Baltimore.
Yeah, like
outrageous.
we're back to this
games
again.
or something.
So, to be fair, we've played quite a few games against Baltimore this year, but he's going to need to start hitting against other
This
teams.
feels like D'Angelo Hall becoming a Pro Bowler just because of Jay Cutler. Like, Aaron Judge is going to be an All-Star this year strictly because he got to play the Orioles 19 times.
Pretty much. So, but yeah, I mean, the Yankees are in the middle of a pretty tight race in the AL East. 4 teams all within a game and a half, and the Yankees are at the bottom of that right now, despite being tied for the best record of the last 10 of those 4 teams. But they've got the lowest run differential of that group because we're just giving up too many runs. As good as our ERA has been, and we're still in the top half of Major League Baseball in that department, despite it ballooning a bit over the past 6 games. Our run differential is not that impressive because we're just not hitting that well. I think we're in the top 10 now in home runs, maybe even closing in on top 5, but outside of the long ball, we're not really doing a whole lot offensively, and that's been a struggle. We did against the Orioles, but again, it's what we do against the Orioles for some reason. We manage to hit against them, but we can't manufacture runs against anybody else, it feels like. So
well, for some reason it's the Orioles and they stink. I think that's the reason.
I mean, for some reason, the Orioles starting pitchers this past weekend were in that Jorge Lopez, Adam Plutko, and somebody else. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Does it matter? No.
No, if it's not John Means, it doesn't matter.
But I mean, the AL East is a tough division right now. We've got 4 teams above 500. I think the NL West has 3 teams above 500. Nobody else has more than 2. So it's a tough division up top right now.
How come the Yankees don't play the Red Sox at all until June 4th? That's the first meeting.
Is that right?
Both teams are actually good
right,
the same year for the first time in what seems like a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. It's a fair question. I mean, those are always really fun games. You get really good viewership. I mean, last year the games that we played not last year, but 2 years ago, I guess it was, when we played the international games.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Oh my goodness, that was 2 years ago. Holy crap!
Because it wasn't last year. Wasn't nobody going anywhere last year.
Yeah, no, those were some really fun games. Like it was weird. Like the stadium, just something about the airflow in there was affecting the way that the ball was traveling from the pitcher's hands to the plate, and they were just hit fests. It was nuts, but it was fun. I think we had. One of those games, the first inning took an hour.
Yeah,
it was like a half an hour for the top and another half an hour for the bottom of the inning. It was ridiculous. I'm like sitting here like we're about to have a 9-hour game. What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, and they had all that foul territory. Remember that? Like somebody hit a pop up, and then the first baseman is just running, and he's exhausted.
It was like Oko on steroids.
Yeah, and he's halfway to the wall.
It's like he's going to need oxygen by the time he gets back to the infield.
Right. Yeah, he's exhausted.
But yeah, so I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say here. We talked last week a little bit about the situation with the with some of the coaches out. It turned out that we had 7 coaches out for COVID. All of them had gotten the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. None of them. I think 6 of the 7 were asymptomatic. We may have had one who did show symptoms, but all of them had gotten the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and so it does appear that vaccine is a little bit less effective at preventing people from catching it, but still effective at preventing people from getting seriously sick from it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, if the vaccine keeps you from getting sick, then
that's the primary purpose.
Yeah, that's the point, really. I got my second shot last Friday, so after being out of action on Saturday, just on the floor.
Oh, you had some side effects.
Yeah, that was rough.
I didn't get any of that, man. I was fine. Like,
lucky you. Yeah, my second one was rough. Oh my goodness, I had chills that night. It was awful. But by the end of the next day, I was 100%. I was good to go.
Yeah, by Saturday night I was good, but Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, it was like one of the worst hangovers ever. Just pain and not really hungry and just feeling ugh.
Yeah,
just want to close your eyes and wait for it to stop.
Yeah, no, it was the same for me. But yeah, no, this past Monday was 2 weeks since my second dose, so I'm good to go. I can start just hanging out with everybody. No, I'm not going to do all that. But
okay. Still need my microchip to fully install. Trey Mancini homered to center. Orioles 1-0 over Tampa Bay.
Go Orioles.
Yeah. Still need my microchip to fully install over the next couple weeks. But
it's a slow installation. That's slow. That's even slower than PS4 software.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to have to tap the side of my head to get Bill Gates' attention. That's the emergency button over there, and tell him to hurry it up with the controlling software or whatever.
Yeah, you can get his attention right now. That's what our phones are for.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he knows where I am all the time.
Yeah.
I've got this phone and all the
Yeah,
social
he
media
didn't need a
and everything.
vaccine to do that.
Yeah. 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 All the people were like, well, the vaccine, they're going to put a chip and it's going to track you wherever you go. Your phone already does that every minute of every day. And it learns patterns as well.
It's scary.
And then suggests stuff to you.
I
Like, you ever
swear,
been talking about something?
I swear there's been times that, like, I've been talking to Rashonda in person, not text messaging, not even like talking on the phone. Like, we're in person and we're talking about some sort of product, and like that night I'm online and I'm getting advertisements for that product.
Exactly.
I'm like, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah. They're all listening to.
Yeah, they're putting in the vaccine. Give me a break.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do that.
Right. What were we even talking about?
We were about to move on to the White Sox.
Oh my goodness. White Sox.
This whole thing.
So let's try to figure out what even happened. So the White Sox were beating the ever-living crap out of the Twins. The Twins, who I believe I picked to win their division, suck. So the Twins are the worst team in baseball. They're terrible. So it was the 9th inning of a 15-4 game, I want to say. The Twins pitcher at the time is Williams Astudillo, nicknamed La Tortuga for being a bit of a rounder fella. So, he was pitching, throwing some little soft tosses, 47 miles an hour. And rookie DH Your Mean Mercedes, takes to get to 3-0, and then one of these little lollipops is sort of hanging up in the zone on the 3-0 pitch, and he just cranks it over the fence for a home run. And then, all the old people start getting bent out of shape. So apparently Tony LaRussa, who's incredibly old,
he showed his age.
Yes. He showed his age about like how, this isn't appropriate and this isn't how we play baseball and this type of stuff. And then the next night, which was last night, in the 7th inning, the Twins pitcher throws behind Your Mean Mercedes. And the Twins pitcher, I think his name was Duffy, got ejected from the game. Rocco Baldelli, the Twins manager, got ejected from the game. He came out to argue this for some reason. Like, what are you arguing? You're the one who told him to do that, and now you're arguing. It's also been a stark contrast. I listened to both calls, the Twins broadcast and the White Sox broadcast. Now, the White Sox broadcast is very progressive and stuff. They seem to get it. The Twins broadcast... they're apparently from the Tony La Russa era and thought it was inappropriate to swing 3-0 when a position player's pitching and it's the 9th inning and the game is 15-4. I'm sorry, Minnesota Twins, that you got all up in your feelings. Somebody hit a home run when you're getting blown out by 11 runs in the 9th inning. It was 11 runs. Maybe Minnesota Twins, you should be more focused on your record at 14-27. That is the worst in baseball.
It's technically tied with the Rockies, but...
Oh, okay. Well, they're supposed to suck. But yeah, 14-27. Hello? Look at the scoreboard and the standings before you start, you get a home run on 3-0. That hurts our feelings. Like, no, that's not how this game is played.
No.
That's not how life works as well. Just get over it. Tired of it.
This is baseball we're talking about. This is not football where you can run the ball to run out the clock. This is not basketball where you can hold the ball and let the play clock run down or the shot clock run down. This is baseball. Every hitter comes up to plate and they get 3 strikes to try and get a hit. And they're all up there to get hits. And you get a hit however you can, whatever pitch you see. If it's an 0-0 pitch, if it's a 2-0 pitch, if it's an 0-3 pitch, if you see your pitch coming in, you take a whack at it.
You can't swing at an 0-3 pitch.
Yeah, you're sitting on the bench, man.
If it's an 0-2 or a 3-0, that's what I meant. Anyway, You see your pitch coming in, you take a whack at it. Like, nobody, if anybody out there thinks that they're in the right mind, try to tell somebody just take the strikeout or just let somebody throw pitches to you or whatever it is, you're nuts. I'm sorry. But then even beyond that, the throwing behind Mercedes, that's bad enough on its own. But when you take into account that the day before this, Kevin Pillar took a fastball to the face. He's got multiple nasal fractures. I don't know if you guys saw the replay, but in the immediate aftermath, blood is just pouring out of his face.
Yeah, I was watching that game live.
Steady
that was a Braves game
of blood. It's not like drop, drop, drop. It is gushing out of his face. And you're going to go and throw behind a guy the next day? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, there was so much blood they had to delay the game to clean it up. That's how much he was bleeding. So why'd you throw a baseball at somebody?
Of course you're going to throw him out of the game. Why the hell are you even thinking about coming out and arguing that?
Mm-hmm. Well, Baldelli was really arguing he was arguing about the process that the umpires had to have a little meeting beforehand. Like, just Rocco Baldelli, please leave. At least he did a better job of defending his player than Tony LaRussa did.
There's that.
Who
Tony,
just threw your mean Mercedes right under the bus. The bus to the senior center, apparently. He's like, oh, there's going to be a consequence, and he needs to learn this is how we play the game, and all this kind of stuff. Tony LaRussa, you need to learn for a second that you need to get with the times. Okay, you haven't managed since Game 7 of the 2011 World Series. Okay, it's been a little while.
And the crazy thing is, I don't see anybody I don't see a lot of the baseball media getting upset about Tony LaRussa not defending Mercedes. But then you have everybody focusing on the Phillies dugout with Joe Girardi and Juan Segura when they got into a confrontation after Segura committed 3 errors in the weekend series, and they had a confrontation, and they already put that in the dust. Like, that was a private, in air quotations, conversation in the dugout that, what was said was said. They don't need to go into it to everybody else, but, all these reporters are trying to find out what was said. What'd you guys say to each other? But nobody is out here saying anything about Tony LaRussa just throwing his player under the bus and not being a good manager at all in that situation.
He's also not a good manager for this team, right? Like, if you're going to be the old curmudgeon-y guy, then do that with an old curmudgeon-y type team, like the Twins, for example. But like, this White Sox team is young and fun and energetic.
Yeah.
And Tony LaRussa is not any of those things. So why is he managing this team? That just boggles my mind. Tony LaRussa also made a pretty severe blunder earlier in the season, showing he's not hip with the times. It was, I want to say, their first extra inning game, and he wasn't sure what to do with the runner on second base. So he put in one of their starting pitchers to go pinch run. He didn't know that it was the guy who made the last out.
He thought that it had to be the last out, and not that if the last out was a pitcher, you can put in the guy before him. Or anybody or something like that. I forget.
Yeah, something like that. So he screwed that up. Like, come on, man.
But I mean, that one I'm not going to give him too hard of a time on, because you got NFL coaches who, after going into overtime, admit that they didn't realize the rules. Like, that's happened.
Well, Hugh Jackson, got to look at the tape.
Yeah,
that's where that came from.
At least in this case, the extra innings rules for Major League Baseball are only a year old. When Hugh Jackson had that, that had been the rule for a few years in the NFL.
Even still, you're managing a major league team. You should know all the rules.
You should, absolutely.
So why is he? I don't have the words. I'm just so frustrated with this young fun team being just driven right into the ground, or they're carrying this old guy along behind them. Like this doesn't make any sense to me.
Let
this
them
is
play. Just let them play. Come on. Just let them play.
What happens? There were all these commercials last year and 2 years ago. Let the kids play, right? You have Fernando Tatis Jr. on the cover of your flagship video game, flipping his bat, making a whole bunch of money off of that. But at the same time, this stuff is going on.
Let them play.
Yeah, I find it humorous that teams would sit there and they'd put a position player into pitch. And the reason you do that is obvious. It's because you don't care about run prevention anymore because the game is lost. You can't win, in your opinion. So you're willing to sit there and sacrifice run prevention for the purpose of saving arms. Well, when you put in a guy that you know is going to get rocked because he's not actually a professional pitcher and he gets rocked, why are you mad? Like, what are you mad about here? This is what you expected to happen. And not only did he go out there and not be a professional pitcher and yet try to pitch, he made a complete joke out of it. He's lobbing 45-mile-an-hour non-fastballs. It's slow-pitch softball type balls. You cannot throw that pitch to a major league hitter, and a damn good one at that, and expect him to say, you know what, I'm not going to swing at that. I mean, give me a break. You threw him a meatball. He's not just going to sit there and say, nah, I'll let that
We're only
go.
up by 11.
Like, no. He's probably thinking, are you kidding me? He really just threw me that? I'm going to hit that in the bleachers. And that's what he did.
The thing is, honestly, in reality, he's not even really thinking that. I mean, even a position player who's only throwing, in the 70s or 80s, that's not enough time to really have that much of a thought process. Like when you're a baseball player, everything is muscle memory, reaction. You're not thinking about who is pitching me the ball, and beyond just being aware or maybe unaware in certain situations of their arsenal. You're reacting to the pitch you're thrown. And if you start to try and make yourself think, okay, well, this is a position player, so if he throws me a meatball, I shouldn't react to it the way that I normally would react to a meatball. Then the next time you get a meatball from an actual pitcher, what do your reaction time might be a tick off, and then you don't end up hitting a home run when you should.
I mean the bottom line is it's still competition. Okay, you're still competing. If the game is so lost that nobody can hit home runs anymore,
walk off the field.
Then just walk off the field and tell everybody to go home.
Yeah. I mean, this is like we talk about taking a knee in football to run out the clock. Let's say football wasn't measured by a clock. That's not how we regulated when the game ended. It was regulated by a net total of pass attempts. And you had to throw the ball 60 times a piece, and whatever the final score was, that was the game. Do you think any quarterback that's up by, say, 12 touchdowns or something ridiculous like that would say, you know what, I got 5 more passes I have to throw. I'll just throw them all in the dirt? Hell no. They're going to try to complete those passes. We're trying to
14
I'm not going to sit there and just sit and jack with my numbers because you crybabies can't handle the fact that I'm kicking your ass, okay? Mm-hmm. I have to complete these passes. I have to throw the ball here. The game dictates I have to do this. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. Screw you. I don't care what you think at that point because I'm forced to play the game. I'm forced to continue to try to compete until the game is over or else we lose. I can't walk off the field even though we're up 12 runs. We have to keep going out there. So while we're all here, let's actually try to do our jobs. One side said, yeah, I'm going to actually try to hit the ball. The other side said, let's make a joke out of it and have some dude throwing slow pitch softball up there.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to feel bad for the guy that hit the home run?
Mm-hmm.
I tweeted it yesterday. Never apologize for hitting a home run. There's never a circumstance where hitting a home run's a bad thing.
If your Mercedes somehow by the end of the year ends up one home run ahead of Shohei Ohtani and Ronald Acuna and whoever else is at the top of their home run leaderboards at that point, if somehow he ends up one ahead of them, nobody's going to be looking back at this game and saying, oh, we need to put an asterisk on that because he hit one of those on a 3-0 count against a position player when he shouldn't have been swinging the bat. Nobody's going to do that.
Well, it was raining.
But if he finishes one behind those guys, you can bet he's going to be looking back like, man, I should have swung at that meatball that I got on that 3-0 pitch against a position player.
Or even more importantly, when he sits down with his agent at his arbitration meeting and he only hit 39 homers instead of 40.
Yeah.
And you get paid a certain amount for hitting 40. And they say they're not going to go and watch the tape with Hugh Jackson and say, well, gee, he sacrificed an opportunity to hit a home run there so let's just give it to him. No, they're going to say, lawyer up, buddy. You're making less money. This affects people's pay.
Yeah.
This is how these players make their money. They're out there to hit. They're not out there to show mercy to some team that clearly gave up 2 innings ago. That's not how this goes. And like I said, the Twins have no reason to be mad because they did this on purpose. This was by design. They said, score all the runs you want. We're not using any more of our arms because we can't win. That's okay. That happens all the time. We see position players come in, and they come in for the express purpose of getting to the end of the game, regardless of how many runs they give up, because that doesn't matter. So why does this matter? And Tony LaRussa, honestly, this is just more case in point that he's all about Tony LaRussa. He's the most selfish bastard I've seen as a manager. For a guy who's supposed to be a leader, he's all about himself. And frankly, I don't believe in good managers tactically. They don't exist because the tactical moves are obvious. Baseball's not a complicated sport. You either do the smart thing, which is common sense, or you do something ridiculously stupid. There's nothing where you're like, oh my God, that was a genius move that guy just pulled out. No, they're all obvious solutions. What makes a great manager is being a leader of men. This is the opposite of that. Like, I look at this and I like, how many managers are in the Hall of Fame just because they were a genius? 0. There's not a single manager that got in because he was good at his job. They get in because their team wins. It has nothing to do with their actual ability. And that's Tony LaRussa right there. He coached great teams. That's it. So I'm not going to defer to his Hall of Fame genius because he's supposed to be Mr. Oh my God, he's so cerebral and smart. No, he's not. He's not that. Nobody that manages that. You know how I know that? Because they don't pay them any money. They pay the players all the money because the players win games. Managers just go out there and screw it up every once in a while. Well, he's screwing it up right now. That's his job, is to not screw it up, and that's what he's doing right now. He's sitting there talking down to Lance Lynn when he sits there and says, well, that guy has a locker and I have an office. Well, that guy with the locker is making 10 times your salary. So maybe you ought to give him a little credit too.
And I mean, your office, that's a rental. You're hired to be fired in this business.
You got like a 2-year deal. Managers get 2 and 3-year deals. Players get 10-year deals.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up.
14-year deals.
Yes, at times. I will say, to quote Pro Football Talk commenter, this isn't the first time that Tony LaRussa has struggled to control a Mercedes.
Yes. Yeah. The guy who can't even follow the written rules of the actual world, is complaining about people not following the unwritten rules.
And by the way, for these people that are whining about, oh, well, it's not so much that he hit the home run, it's the fact that he ignored the take sign. I don't believe
take sign.
I've never believed in take signs because take signs are basically hand-holding professional athletes. You give take signs to little leaguers because 12-year-olds are too dumb to know, maybe I shouldn't swing at this 3-0 pitch when the bases are loaded and the kid can't throw a strike. That's when you use a take sign. Pro athletes don't need a take sign, especially when they're up 11 runs. That's not a thing. Secondly, I don't believe a take sign was even given. John Boy kind of broke it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mercedes never even really looked towards the coach because why would he? Who's giving a sign in a game like that? There's no need to bunt or to steal or to hit and run when you're up 11 runs. That's not happening. So he just kind of absentmindedly glanced over to the third base coach, got nothing from him, and stood in the box. And Tony LaRussa is acting like he's screaming, oh my God, I think he's going to swing just because of the look in his eye or some bull crap like that. Like he's some, human whisperer here who can just detect behavior by a look. Yeah, right. Have another
Also, if
beer.
there was screaming, we would have heard the screaming.
Yes.
Like the trash can banging from John Boy.
Because he was like, he said he yelled, take, from like the top step in the dugout. I'm like, really? Because I'm not hearing a peep from the dugout, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
We can hear that. And we didn't hear anything from you. So that was a lie. Mm-hmm. That was I'm going to throw my player under the bus, and try to pretend like I'm bigger than it all because I'm Tony LaRussa and that's all I've got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get him out of here. He needs to go yesterday.
He needs to go. So, we're tired of Tony LaRussa and the like. Let's see. Did we talk about Manny Machado? Got himself into some hot water.
No, that was an interesting play. He was breaking up a double play, and I'm on the fence on that. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, make sure you Google the video for him sliding into second base. What was it, 2 days ago?
Yeah, it's been a couple days.
And,
maybe it was this past weekend.
It was over the weekend.
At the last moment, he broke off to his left a couple steps and went into a slide right at the shortstop who was trying to turn the double play, and took him out. Legal play. Some people tried to argue it's legal, but also dirty, and I'm a little bit on the fence because I don't know that he needed to break all the way out there. He did break kind of far from the base path, but I think he also thought that the shortstop was going to be closer to the bag when he tried to make the throw, and he was trying to avoid. I don't really know what happened there.
Are we talking about the same play? Because he didn't take out the shortstop. He took out the second baseman.
Wasn't the second baseman then?
And he wasn't near the bag.
Yeah.
It was a play where he was running to second, and the second baseman fields the ground ball, and he approaches Machado to attempt to tag him in the base path. And
is that what happened? I caught like the latter half. Like all the replays I saw, like they started with the slide.
And I can speak to this as, and again, you guys roll your eyes at when I say this, but when I played, we were taught if you are running to second base and the second baseman has the ball, do not just let him tag you out. Okay, duck down, make him reach to tag you, do something like that. And the instant I saw Manny hit the deck, I thought, okay, he's getting out of the way of the tag. And then the next thing I know, the guy's tumbling over him. And I'm like, oh, I've never seen that happen as a result of that. But I have seen people take a dive like that to avoid a tag. And that's what you're taught. That's what the Padres teach their base runners. And every single player that watched that play has come out and said, yeah, that's textbook. That's
but
what
didn't he also like break off of his like base running path? Like he was no longer running at the base.
I didn't see him leave the base path at all. He cut
well into like to the left of the base path that he had been on when he went into that slide.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Because the fielder was coming from Machado's right. So if he's cutting towards the left, that's even further proof that he was attempting to avoid the tag more so than dive into.
But you're not allowed to leave the base path.
Otherwise, I don't think Manny did leave the base path.
Because if you leave the base path that you set, you're out whether he tags you or not.
Right, but that's not what I certainly did not see Manny deviate from a base path. I saw the exact opposite. I thought he stayed right in his base path. In fact, the umpire didn't call Manny out until he got up and checked on the guy for falling over. If Manny had just got up and run to second, he would have been ruled safe. But he saw the guy, he probably assumed he got tagged out anyway, and he went and checked on the guy because he fell on his face, and everybody was fine. And guess what? The Cardinals, who complain about everything, didn't complain about this. There was no appeal from the manager saying that should be interference in a double play. There's no yelling at Manny. There was no throwing at him or any other Padres or any talk about that. The announcers moved off of it. This was just people on Twitter who saw something and to have a bone to pick with Manny because he's got a history. And yeah, there are times where Manny has done things where we've talked about it on this show, where we've said, yeah, that was a dirty play. Best case scenario, negligent. Worst case, blatantly dirty. That it just didn't apply to this.
I didn't see this at all as a dirty play. I just thought that he left his base path. It's like,
I did not see it that way. Now you can go back and watch it again.
I will.
Again,
I will.
And it was
like I
again,
said, the
is,
replays I've seen they cut in at the last second, so I haven't seen the entire thing in context. So I do have to do that. But regardless, I definitely didn't see anything that warranted Twitter just completely losing it.
Yeah, they lost it because of who it was and his prior history. That was it. I thought that. Yeah, I feel like I understand that certain players don't get the benefit of the doubt when things like this happen, but
there's no doubt here.
There's no doubt. Yeah, like there are situations like if Manny spikes a guy running to first, I am not going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say it was an accident because history says it probably wasn't. But if it's a situation where it was clearly a clean play, then I'm not going to sit there and say, well, actually it was dirty because this guy did it. And that's just not how it works.
Yeah, that's not a thing. Let's see. Spencer Turnbull of the Tigers threw a no-hitter. It's the 5th of the season And it's the second against Eric's Mariners.
They're not my Mariners
in as
anymore.
many weeks.
You can't do this to me. This does not hurt my feelings. I have left them behind. They are not my team anymore.
Well, at this point, it's just shtick on this show.
Yeah, we're going to be doing this podcast in
time.
2030, and we're still going to be talking about your Mariners, Eric.
Right.
Just like we're going to be referencing Hugh Jackson watching the tape. And, if anybody's still listening at that point, they'd be like, who the hell is Hugh Jackson?
Who's listening now?
Some people. Ask him to send us some email. We need some mailbag.
We've been asking and we get no email.
Get absolutely nothing. That's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough stuff.
Just dust in the mailbox. So
yes, this
tied
is
for the most since 1917 through May 18th.
Yeah.
That's hard to say.
So it's tied for the most no-hitters through May 18th in a season since 1917.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So that happened. Yeah. I wasn't awake to see the Tigers and the Mariners in the middle of the night last night.
I was, because it was a no-hitter. So no, I didn't actually watch that.
Yeah.
But
it's
Eric's Mariners are also the first team to be no-hit twice in a month since the 2015 Dodgers and the fifth overall since 1900.
I'm amazed at the 2015 Dodgers on that list, because that was a good team. That team made the playoffs.
They got no-hit twice in a month, though.
I mean, but let's not forget, the Mariners were damn close to having to be 3 times a month because Zach Plesac took a no-hitter into the 8th inning against them last week. I mean, it could have easily been 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very it was. And they've had a couple of other games where they were no-hit through like the 7th inning.
Just a joke of a franchise.
I mean, they're just miserable.
Like every time I get a
offense.
push notification that there's a pitcher making a bid for a no-hitter, I can
always
pretty
in
safely
Seattle.
assume it's the Mariners, because it always is.
Right, because the Mariners on offense just objectively are terrible, like, no matter where they play. And then because they play in Seattle, the gigantic ballpark, like, it's hard to hit there as well. So,
Their opponents are hitting.
You just, like
the
Rockies aren't getting no hit all the time, like the Mariners are, because they play in a launching pad, even though they suck too.
Yeah, they could still at least connect, at least with one of those pitches that normally would break 3 feet, but with the thin air, it only breaks 2, and it just gets shelled.
I mean, just hit it somewhere.
I mean, the thing is, the Mariners actually moved the fences in a few years back to try to help boost the home run numbers, but we've talked about this with places like Coors Field, where the field is ginormous. Like, the outfield there is huge, and they do so to try to combat the thin air. And it doesn't work because the balls still fly out of the ballpark, and now you've got more ground to cover, so the outfielders have a harder time preventing doubles and triples because you've got huge power alleys too.
You basically get the opposite situation in Seattle, where you bring the fences in a little bit to combat the thicker air from them being, basically on the Pacific, but then it also means less room for the ball to drop in the field of play.
Yep, it's about the atmosphere much more so than where the fences are, because places like Fenway Park, like left field is not a homer happy place, but it's a double happy place because of the green monster.
Yep.
You turn a lot of home runs into doubles, but you also turn a lot of fly ball outs into doubles because the wall is so short and close to home plate, but it's a huge tall wall, so a lot of missiles that would normally travel 390, 400 feet just go careening right into the wall.
Yeah.
So it's really about, the atmosphere in that situation for how far the balls fly, because each move that you change the dimensions of the field, it might negatively affect home run power, but it increases doubles and triples because you've got more outfield space to cover.
Yep.
The Mariners' issue was just the team sucks, and the air is just, it's impossible for the ball to fly there at all.
Yep.
It just deadens everything. It's like in San Francisco as well. But anyway, the Mariners stink. They're always gonna. It seems like they almost feel like a franchise, like in the NFL, where you see a team just takes on an identity where we just do defense now. Well, the Mariners just seem to do no offense. For the last 20 years, it's just been, we're just not going to hit, period. We had the worst offense of all time in 2010, and we've decided we're going to re-up on that in 2021.
The worst offense of all time.
It was ugly stuff, man. Certainly in the DH era, it was atrocious.
They had a DH.
Yes, they did. He wasn't any good either.
He wasn't doing any H.
No, he was doing some kind of H, but not the right kind. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I should not say that about somebody.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either.
Okay. We'll talk. Okay, Corey got it.
Evan, of course, didn't get it.
Anyway, the only guy on that team to get hit was Ichiro, and the whole team hated him for it. So the
whole team hated him.
You had people criticizing him in the media, saying all Ichiro cares about is showing up and getting his 2 hits every game. I'm like, but 2 hits a game is good.
Right?
Like, what are you
What's
talking
wrong with
about?
that?
2 more than the rest of y'all.
Yeah, exactly. Ichiro was the only reason why you didn't see 5 no-hitters against the Mariners in 2010. He was the only guy that got hits.
Yeah. So. Let's see. The best player in baseball is out 6 to 8 weeks with a calf strain. I thought we already talked about Chris Davis.
No, I put this in there in the Expressway because Corey had the gall yesterday to suggest that Shohei Ohtani's better than Mike Trout, which he's not.
He's hitting a lot of home runs.
He is hitting a lot of home runs, but
and he's been also pitching pretty well.
I get that, but he's also batting .263. I mean,
but he's also pitching really well.
Yeah, he's walking a lot of guys, though. Too many walks.
Yeah.
It's why he only throws 5 innings, is because he strikes out like 10 batters, but he walks like 6.
Yeah, so he's throwing a lot of pitches. No, it's true.
And so I'm just like watching Shohei pitch. I'm like, wow, he's really electric on the mound. I'm like, why is he already out of the game after 5 innings? It's like, oh, because he's already thrown 100 pitches because he walked 6 guys. I'm like, well, that's annoying.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So
Although
Trout
he's not
is
always
injured.
out of the game at that point, he's just usually in right field.
Yeah, they just put him in right field. What? Like it's Little League. Like we'll just have the shortstop come in and pitch, and then have the pitcher move to first base.
Those were fun days.
Yeah,
those good times. Just shuffling around the team. Hey, you come in and throw now.
So Mike Trout is injured, got a calf strain. He was frustrated when he was sort of hobbling off the field. So he's gonna be out a couple of months. That's disappointing. We're not gonna get to see Mike Trout.
Yeah, he had been struggling a little bit in the games leading up to that. He'd been having a lot of strikeouts, but yeah, I mean it sucks. He's a great player, and having him and Shohei on that team, had Los Angeles they're still not necessarily contenders.
They suck,
man.
They're still terrible.
They're 7 games back in their division, but they were hovering up in that 500 range for the first time in a while.
Well, now
I'm
they're
sorry. I just
sinking below it.
The Angels have a duty to be better, given the fact that they've got the best player in the league, maybe the best player we've ever seen play baseball.
It really is
Mike
sad
Trout.
that his career has basically been wasted there.
Yeah, and now not only that, we've got this guy who, he's not as good as Mike Trout, but he's probably way more exciting given what he does in Shohei Ohtani, and he's certainly really good. Like he's definitely an all-star player this year, and at least in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And he's so much fun to watch. They've got Mike Trout, who's great. Anthony Rendon seemingly is just perpetually hurt now. He just said, you know what, I got my money. I'm just going to hang out on the IL. And they've got absolutely nothing else. I'm like, I don't understand.
Dylan Bundy.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, that's the guy. I think I cut him off my team finally. I said, all right, enough's enough. I gave you a shot. You got to go. But, yeah, the Angels it feels like I don't like seeing people leave their teams because you like to see a guy stay with one team. It's a little romantic about baseball when players stick with one team. But not if they're going to be terrible. You got to go somewhere and win, man. I don't want to see Mike Trout play in one playoff series his whole career.
And
where they
got swept by the Royals.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Just awful. That just feels like a complete... And the Angels have money, so it's not like they can sit there and cry poverty. They were paying Albert Pujols just all this money for 10 years to be trashed, so now he's gone. Go get some talent. Go find somebody.
Well, it's because they can't pitch. They haven't been able to pitch in the entire Trout era, right? Like, who's been their best pitcher all this time? Was it Jarrett Weaver? Or, was it C.J. Wilson?
C.J. Wilson?
Garrett Richards? Like, who's been their ace pitcher in the Trout era for the Angels? Who is it?
Garrett Richards had one season as like a bona fide top of the rotation, all-star type of pitcher, and that was the year the Angels made the playoffs. And then he blew out his knee, and he's just terrible now. And that's been the story of Anaheim's life in the Mike Trout era. It's just been a massive disappointment every single year.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, Angel Stadium it's not great. It's really cramped in there. Like the concourses are narrow and short. Also, sneaky cold in Southern California.
It also looks weird on TV. Every time I watch an Angels game, it looks like, how people film Mexico in TV shows with like the yellow sepia tints. It's just bizarre. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that. But, it's not great. It's okay. It's next to Disneyland, which is cool, I guess.
You go over to the Honda Center, too, and watch the Ducks, mighty Ducks.
Right. We're called that on purpose because of the movie, Corey.
There's an eye roll there. Okay, we can move on now.
Let's see. There's been a topic added since we started that I actually noticed. Kelly Klein, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yep. There's an extra E in there. Has been hired Monday as Broncos Executive Director of Football Ops. She's the highest-ranking woman in NFL scouting. I think this is great for, inclusion and stuff. There's no reason why women can't work in the NFL in really any role. So, and the Broncos have been kind of bad. They're historically the Broncos are one of the best teams, but like the last 5 years since Peyton Manning retired, they haven't been that good. So, she'll obviously help them out. They need all the help they can get. Maybe they can find a quarterback his only traits are being tall and white. That's the end of his skill set.
The only one that Russell Wilson didn't check for John Elway was being tall. Or white, but he didn't say that one. he only said the only one he didn't check was being tall. So he goes and he drafts the guy that's just tall.
And right. And white. And white, yeah. So this is not quite as high a level as like Kim Ng with the Marlins, but I mean this is really big. This is the highest level that a woman has reached in the NFL to date. She got started with the Minnesota Vikings. She was there for about 10 years, and she got her start as a public relations intern with the Vikings, and managed to find her way into the scouting department as an assistant before becoming their college scouting coordinator for like 3 years. Now she's going to be the executive director of football operations, which basically puts her in charge of pretty much the college scouting department. So she'll be in charge of player evaluations, preparation for the NFL draft. She'll be overseeing their video and equipment departments as well with Denver. So she's going to have a lot of responsibility, and I think that's a really good thing. Just continue to find people who are from underrepresented populations, whether it's from women, whether it is people of color. And, we got to open up those pipelines and find those people. They're out there. They're out there. You can't tell me, well, we just can't find anybody. If you can't find anybody, then you're not looking because they're out there.
In the universe, talent is distributed everywhere evenly, but opportunities aren't.
Yep.
So, there's talented people who are capable of doing these jobs, but if you're only looking certain places, you're not going to find the best people.
Yep. So I'm excited for her. I'm hopeful that she finds success out there with Denver. And best of luck to her.
How come there's no NFC teams who seem like they're up and coming and going to be great? Why are they all in the AFC?
Well, Ty had to turn back because the AFC was down for a while. It was pretty much just 3 teams. It was whoever Peyton Manning played for, whoever Tom Brady played for, and whoever Ben Roethlisberger played for. And those are the teams that seem to win the conference every year.
I mean, the team has kind of a little bit of an up-and-coming feel to it, to me.
The capital T team.
Yeah, the football
That's
team.
what they should be called. Just the capital T's. Yes, that is it.
What?
I got it.
Okay, why not? Let's make them the capital T's.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington capital T's.
Exactly.
I love it. Stamp it.
What is even happening here?
Perfection. Anyway, I don't know if I agree that I would say the team is up and coming until they find a damn quarterback, man. Gotta get that right. Gotta get that position right.
They had a quarterback and they found a quarterback. We're good. We got Fitzmagic.
Think about the Bears were up and coming 3 years ago, and well, what happened to them? You know,
they went to the playoffs last year.
They won the division last year.
One of their players won the MVP.
They did not win the division last year. The Packers did, and
right.
Yeah, they won the MVP in a losing effort.
Yeah. I didn't realize we had moved to the Bears until Evan said the MVP. I was like, wait, Washington didn't have the MVP?
No.
I was very confused.
No, the Bears franchise had to hit the reset button by getting rid of their quarterback and trading up to draft Justin Fields because their up-and-coming status was short-circuited by the fact that they didn't have a good quarterback.
Yeah.
So you got to get that position right.
But it's also difficult to really call teams up and coming because of the level of parity that we see in the NFL. Like teams that are up and coming, like they arrive. They usually arrive that year. There really isn't. Yeah. You really don't see teams who it's like a very clear 3-year upward trajectory from being terrible to being in the playoffs. It usually happens a lot quicker than you expect.
Yeah, your entire team looks different in 3-year windows. I mean, we're talking you could go from being a Super Bowl contender to being in last place in 3 years. The windows just don't last that long unless you're doing
you can go from being a Super Bowl contender to being a terrible team in 1 year, and the reverse in 1 year. In fact, in the NFL, it feels like it's more common to see that happen in 1 year than over a steady 3-year progression.
Well, then you've just got erratic teams like the Cleveland Browns, who we thought were up and coming, and then they hired Freddie Kitchens, and then they actually came and were good, and now people think they're good. Yes, you can write that down. Yes, the Cleveland Browns came. Just pencil it in as provocative language and get us a nice PG-13 rating here. That's great. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about Washington this year. Just it feels like they could have made a move for a quarterback, but they didn't. And at the end of the day, that's okay. But they're going to have to find one eventually. But like I said, the best shot they had was Justin Fields, and they had competition. The Bears probably outbid them.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's probably about it. Did anything else get added? Was I not paying attention? Something else.
Shout
I do
out,
want to add.
nothing else.
The Orioles are up 5-0 on Tampa Bay right now.
Wow.
Trey Mancini hit a home run. Freddie Galvis hit a home run. And Trey Mancini hit a 3-run double after that. So we'll see how long this lasts.
Boston is up 5-0 on the Blue Jays.
Who is?
Boston. Alex Verdugo and JD Martinez both hit home runs in the first inning, but JD Martinez is on my bench.
Just a quick mention. Evan and I have talked about this because we both watched. Trey Mancini sat down with Scott Van Pelt in studio last week to discuss his cancer battle and stuff like that. It's worthwhile to check that out. So if you haven't seen it, give it a listen. It's about 5-10 minutes. It's not a lengthy watch, but it's cool to see Trey Mancini just be open with somebody like Scott Van Pelt and just discuss his journey because he's a really good guy. Obviously, he's a good player. And everybody knows his story, but get a little perspective from him, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and I got a shout out. I want to shout out Mike Jones, and I'm muting Eric before he can say who.
Hugh.
Every time. No, but I do want to shout out Mike Jones, basketball coach at DeMatha. No more, unfortunately. He spent 19 years as our head coach. following in the footsteps of the legendary Morgan Wooten, who he was also an assistant coach for. He was a counselor at DeMatha. He was the admissions director for a number of years, and I believe, in fact, he was the admissions director when all of us came into DeMatha. I think all three of us were brought in essentially by him through the admissions office. But fantastic guy, first and foremost. Just everything that is in DeMatha's mission statement, he completely lives by. I have so much respect for him. I'm so grateful that, my first 6 years at DeMatha, that I got a chance to get to know him and talk to him and, be his colleague. I've really really been fortunate to get a chance to get to know him, and I'm going to miss him. But he took a college position as the associate head coach at Virginia Tech. Very well-deserved opportunity for him. He's going to be a fantastic coach at the college level, and I'm sure if he has a desire to move on to the professional level at some point in the future, he'll be great there as well. Because he is, as I said, terrific coach, terrific man, and we're going to miss him at DeMatha for sure.
Yeah, you don't see guys like Mike Jones who have to replace a legendary coach like he did. Generally, when people come into situations like that, they don't find success just because it's such an overwhelming situation where you're never going to meet everybody's expectations. And, for the first few years, he got some of that crap from people. It's like, because he wasn't Morgan Wooten yet. I'm like, well, Morgan Wooten had basically 5 decades to become Morgan Wooten.
Yeah.
You got to give guys some time, and DeMatha did, and Mike Jones proved them right to do so because he's been a brilliant coach and a great representative of the school for a number of years. He's absolutely a nationally recognized name as a coach in his own right because of what he's been able to do at DeMatha. And really, the times have changed a lot with basketball, and Mike Jones has adapted with the times as well. I mean, This is the era of AAU, and high school coaches have to reckon with that now. And that transition sort of happened while Mike was coaching the team. And yet he still managed to roll with it. And he rolled with it and kept with the times and didn't let it affect his integrity or anything like that. But he showed an incredible amount of competence and adaptability while also being the high integrity man that we know that he is.
I certainly wish Mike Jones the best. I actually had several meetings with him while he was, I guess, the director of admissions while I was a student at DeMatha. I was having a little trouble sort of adjusting to the new school, and he was helping me with that. So I can't really speak on. I mean, he certainly was a great basketball coach. And you had some really big shoes to fill, and obviously did a great job at that. So I wish him the best. I do wish, though, why do you have to go to a school that's a rival to where I went to school, right?
And a rival to where we went to school to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go there? Couldn't he have gone to...
In a very selfish way, I'm a little bit bummed that it had to be Virginia Tech, but there are other schools who could have been worse if he'd gone there. But on the bright side, Blacksburg isn't really that far, so
yes, it is.
It's pretty far, dude.
It's really not that far. It's not as far as it could have been. That's a drive I could conceivably make if I want to go down
Hawaii
and watch him coach. It's not like he went to Georgia.
Yeah. I mean.
Corey, do you have any? I know it's early, very early, but do you have any insight on DeMatha's plans to replace Coach Jones?
I don't, and quite honestly, if they were giving me a lot of if I was hearing anything official, I don't know that I would really be able. I don't know that it would be the right thing for me to share a whole lot. I am curious though, whether it's going to be an outside hire, somebody inside the program. When Mike came in after Morgan Wooten retired, he came in as an interim head coach and then became the full-on head coach after that first year.
wow.
It'll be interesting to see if does DeMatha go that route again here, and maybe they let somebody who's in the program be the interim head coach for a short time, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I have not gotten any indication at all from the administration on what direction they're going on, and if I had, I honestly probably wouldn't even comment as much as I have.
Okay. Let's see. So I think that'll just about do it. Let's see. We need to get our mailbag going again. So if you've made it this far into this show, we know you really like us. So send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. Please send us an email. If you have any fan mail, hate mail,
topics
any
you want to
questions,
hear our thoughts on. I mean,
yes,
topics, we talk about the topics that catch our attention over the past week, but things slip through the cracks. And if you have a topic that you really want to hear our opinions on, we're more than happy to talk about it.
Oh yeah,
that's what we do.
Before we get out of here, just a quick update. The Washington Capitals are playing the Boston Bruins in the first round of the playoffs. The series is tied 1-1, and they're playing in Game 3 right now. And the game is tied 1-1. So pretty good series going on there if you're into the hockey pucks and the like. So check that out if you're feeling that.
Yeah. So I'm more of a let's do that hockey, from Chance the Rapper on SNL kind of guy. That's just me. But if you're into that sort of thing, have at it. Let's see. You can find this podcast wherever you found it right now. And it's also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. You can get everything at Amazon, even podcasts like this one. While you're there, go ahead and hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe so you'll be notified immediately when we post a new episode, typically every Wednesday night, probably around 9 o'clock or so, depending on how much we ramble about whatever there is to talk about. You can follow the show on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can follow us individually on Twitter as well. Corey is at Corey Puffett, Eric is at Quagmire67, and I am at Evan_Ash13. Go ahead and like our Facebook page as well. All of our lately we're doing all of our podcasts audio only, but live on Facebook. Did we get any comments on the Facebook Live?
Not
Anybody
tonight.
say anything?
Not tonight.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's get out of here. Hopefully the Orioles can hold on up 5 runs. It's still an adventure the way this team pitches.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Yeah. So for Corey and Eric, I'm Evan. This has been the Sportsballers podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.